Welcome. We've just had a fantastic session on the art of managing toxic employees. Really, lots of people attending to work out how can they, first of all, is minimize the number of toxic employees coming into the company, and then when they're in, how to minimize and this toxic behavior that is in the company. So let me share my screen. So this is a shortened version. The masterclass is much longer because we do Q&A. So here, let's get going. So there's always a culture. You end up with one, whatever you do. So you can either choose to shape it, influence it, or take your chances. So the culture that is created decides really the amount of toxic employees or toxic behavior that exists in a company. So you can choose to shape it and influence it or take your chances. So who are we? We're Hello Performance. We're a culture consultancy, and we go in and help companies to improve their culture and make it a great place to work. So this is some of our customers who are giving some feedback. Lovely Bailey of Bristol, who are doing awards now for their values and behaviors. We have Brendan from Wright Medical, where we worked with their supply chain team, and James and DAC Beechcroft, which is a legal firm, improving the feedback in their organization, the feedback culture in their organization. So we did a LinkedIn poll during the week, or 2 weeks ago, I should say. What sort of toxic colleague have you experienced? And you can clearly see here, out of these four, treating others poorly is by far the one that is the highest percentage. So treating others badly or poorly, communicating badly with them, treating them badly, and using the wrong language, that seems to be the one that is by far the winner. So if we keep that in mind, so treating others poorly, what is the impact of that? So we asked on a LinkedIn poll, out of these three, what have you seen as the biggest impact? As you can see, they're pretty equal, but the three of them are really worrying. So decrease in engagement, so what is engagement? Engagement is how committed an employee is to the company or their goals. And we don't want to decrease in that. So what does higher engagement bring? It brings less accidents, less absenteeism, higher customer service satisfaction levels, and higher revenue. So that we do not want to decrease in that. We want to be increasing engagement. Performance decreases. So the impact of these toxic employees is others are impacted and their performance comes down. And most worrying is other employees, performers are quit. That is something definitely we don't want to have, because then we're losing some great employees. And in the culture today, or in the world today, hiring great employees is really difficult. So this is the Harvard research. There was which is reinforcing what we just discussed on the previous slide. But just one of them that stood out to me was that 80% of people said they lost time worrying about these toxic employees, or 63% lost time avoiding them. So this really waste of time. Not only is there performance, motivation, but also 25% took their frustrations out on customers. So this is where the toxic employee had an impact on other employees, and then they took it out on customers. And we definitely would not want that to be occurring. So in a company, you have the all-stars, which are the highly engaged employees who are positive, they're promoting, they're very using language that is very positive about the company. We call them promoters. And then you have the neutrals, which are in the middle. They can easily be swayed. So they're like, yeah, either way, but they can easily be swayed towards the negative detractors, or they can be swayed towards the stars and the all-stars. So what you are trying to do is move more and more of these employees towards the stars, because then you have that positive atmosphere and it soaks up and minimizes any toxic behavior. So the more people we have moved over, also life is a lot easier when you have more engaged employees. So our whole goal is to shift them over to that right-hand side there on the stars. So tip number one, clearly articulate desired behaviors. So this is getting really specific about what behaviors do we want and what behaviors we don't want, what behaviors we're going to reward, and what behaviors we are going to punish. So getting really clear on that. And a real test is it clear? Is it teachable? And is it measurable? That is your key on behaviors. So here's an example from one of our clients where they converted their values, really gorgeous values, into what we do and what we don't do. So this is a construction company. They wanted to make it really clear on what we do and what we don't do. And then you can integrate that into one-to-ones. You can integrate that into performance reviews, and it allows you to have language and specifics to feedback that you are doing it or you're not doing it. Because also this sometimes the behavior side can be quite difficult to feed back on. Sometimes toxic employees can be high performers as well. So tip number 2, create rituals that reinforce the behavior you want to see. So those behaviors, which ones do you need to bring more alive and increase the frequency of? Then create rituals around it. So we gave examples in the masterclass of a client who on a monthly basis, they rotate their values, and in that values, they bring it to life in the town hall. It's mentioned in the newsletter, and every month a manager feeds back on that value and what it means to them, and also the behaviors. So we have another client who does it on a weekly basis and does a different behavior every week to say, what does that behavior mean to me? And shares a story of where we lived that behavior. That brings it to life, makes it real, but also creates that environment of and coaching to the employees. This is what we want, and this is what we don't want. So creating little rituals to reinforce the behavior you want to see. So that's our client. They're their gorgeous values, and they now have town halls, but they also have brought in awards for every at their town hall. What they do is they give an award to an employee who lives that value. And in the beginning, they had to offer rewards to like an Amazon voucher to managers to come forth and put someone in and put in an application for a winner. And nominate somebody for the award. And now they get over 50 every month nominations. That just shows you how you have to struggle at the beginning to get that ritual in place, and then it can take off, and then it can become part of the DNA of the company. And what is it doing? Every month they're seeing someone rewarded for living a value and a behavior. Fantastic. Tip number 3. So this is about now preventing toxic employees from entering. And a lot of the time, toxic employees have different values to what the values of the company are. There is a mismatch between the values. And if you can hire a person that has got more closer values, or it thrives in an environment of the type of culture that is in your company, even better. So asking questions at that interview stage before you select is really important. So for example, if giving honest considered feedback is a behavior of one of our clients, give considered honest feedback, then in the interview they ask the question, so give me an example of where you were given difficult feedback and how did you respond? Give us an example of where you had to give difficult feedback and how did it go? So there you're giving, finding out, is this something that's the norm, and what they struggle with, how and how do they approach it, and see would they fit in the culture or not. Then integrating them well, that is the onboarding. So when employees start, they're really enthusiastic, they're positive about their job, and what we must do is maintain that. And if you integrate them well into the culture, they can be drivers for that culture. But over time, sometimes what happens is then they become into that move towards that left. Remember that diagram where people were neutral or detractors, negative or positives? They sometimes move towards that left, especially if they're surrounded by people who are also negative and toxic. They can then become that. You are a product of your environment. So we want that positive environment to be created. So the culture is that environment, and that really can eliminate and minimize the toxic employees. Tip number 4, mentor the employee. So a lot of the times, the intention of the toxic employee is a really good intention. However, their communication skills a lot of the time are poor. So if you remember back when we did our LinkedIn poll, it was treating others poorly. It's their communication skills are not developed. So mentoring the employees, the first part of that is bringing awareness to the employee of how they come across, and that can be done by giving them feedback, or it can also be done by doing a 360 where they're getting feedback from a variety of people around them who are on different topics, including communication, and that can help bring awareness to their impact of their behavior. Then mentoring and coaching them to really develop them on how they can behave in a way that has a better impact and not considered treating people poorly. Some employees will be open to it, some employees won't. But mentoring is the first step we should do to ensuring that toxic employees have the opportunity to become aware and tweak their behaviors or change their behavior so that they come across in a better way. Tip number 5, there comes a point where a decision has to be made. If mentoring does not work, then be prepared to leave go. So cutting that cord, it needs to be considered. So this can be really difficult, especially if they're one of the high performers with high results. So for example, if they are that, we talked about that salesperson with really high sales numbers, but then they're treating people really poorly internally. You're making that call on, we're going to sacrifice those finances for the better of the team. And a lot of the time when you remove that toxic employee, the other team members actually come up and support that, so that the loss is not as big as you imagine, but it needs to be clearly communicated that we now need everybody to move up. The culture is defined by the lowest tolerated behavior. So considered across the company. I love this statement because this is telling you the culture is defined by the lowest tolerated behavior. So what we tolerate and allow go is saying this is the bar. We're setting the bar for our culture. And coaching managers to be able to have conversations about that lowest tolerated behavior is really important. Do your team leaders and your managers have the skills and confidence to be able to have those difficult conversations, to raise the bar for that lowest tolerated behavior? Then tip number 6, build a clear culture plan. So culture is what is the resistance to toxic employees. It prevents them coming in, but then also ensures that people become a product of a fantastic environment and toxic behavior is minimized or eliminated. So building a culture plan. So companies have sales plans, have marketing plans, but how many companies have culture plans? So 96% of leaders believe that culture is important to delivering the strategy. However, only 6% of time is spent by leaders on culture. So there's a real mismatch there. So ensuring that we raise the profile of culture and have a plan to deliver it is really important. So here is our culture operating system. So for all the factories out there, you have an operating system for those manufacturing lines, but you also need an operating system for your culture. How are you going to ensure that you're bringing it alive and up to speed? So there are 10 steps on ours. We talked about a number of them. Designing those fundamentals. We talked about designing the behaviors. So your culture is your purpose, why you exist, your values, what you value, and your behaviors, how you want to live that culture in your company. 2 is ritualize, which we talked about. Number 3, select. So select the right people to come into your culture. Onboarding, we talked about. Number 5, coaching managers. We mentioned that, ensuring that they have the skills and confidence to have those difficult conversations around behaviors. So a lot of people shy away and they just leave it go. And by leaving it go, what they're saying is actually, we're going to tolerate this low behavior, and that is setting the bar. Communication, really important. We talk about seeing it, hearing it, and feeling it. You need to weave the values and behaviors into all aspects of communication, from newsletters to town halls to any communication to your Monday meetings. Weaving in values is really important. So I have one client who they take a value every Monday in their Monday morning meeting. They read it out and they have a discussion around it. So just bringing it to life again, bringing in the communication. Reboarding. So again, considering how do we reboard existing employees. So we talked about new employees. What about existing employees? We need to bring them in and remind them and reinforce the culture to them as well, so that we're reinvigorating existing employees. Number 8, lead. So walking the talk, leaders leading by example, a really critical one. It is a really detrimental to culture if leaders are not living and breathing the values and behaviors and that they expect from other people. So it is real dishonesty, lack of integrity, and it can be really detrimental to the culture. Aligning is aligning your culture and processes to ensure that they're reinforcing the culture and not detracting from it. And accountability is having accountability for how we're behaving. So that is through your managers having their one-to-ones, your peer-to-peer feedback. Are you creating a culture where peer-to-peer can have feedback to each other, so that we're holding each other account to live this culture, and that keeps it alive? So we went through any questions. We talked about a communication being a key one, where written communication compared to talking on the phone, compared to Zoom meetings, compared to face-to-face. It's really important that there is an opportunity to have that feedback, but also having that courage to do it. So we are consultants, so we help companies improve their culture, but we've also launched, we're really excited about our CultureSMART Leaders Accelerator. And this is where we are taking leaders from companies, they come and join our program for 6 months, and we teach them go through our process and understand and be able to deliver within their own company a great culture. So we're teaching culture consultants to go back into their company, be culture agents in your own company. And it's a really fantastic, we've got the online courses, we've got clinics, the drop-in clinics to support. We have a community who help each other and share ideas. So a lot of companies ask me, what do other companies do for this? It's great in this community, you can share ideas. And also there's personal development to ensure that the leader that's joining really can be the best CultureSMART leader back in their own company. So that is our CultureSMART Leaders. We want you to book in for a demo. It's on this link. The link will be also in the email. But book in on this link. We'll also put it in the comments when you're rewatching the video. And book in a link, and we can show you a demo of how this CultureSMART Leaders Accelerator works, to see, is it something for you and your company? And then we went around the room and asked about gems and pledges. One of the most common ones was defining the behaviors and getting that really clear and bringing that to life. So one company had gone through a culture change, and the leadership had stopped communicating or didn't communicate really well. So more and more people were moving towards that left, those detractor side. And they talked about bringing that culture back to life. Another company had talked about where they had defined the values, but they didn't really specify the behaviors, and they recognize that that's the fundamentals of the culture. And that statement is, culture is defined by that lowest tolerated behavior, was something that resonated with a lot of people, and really working out what is that behavior and how do we raise the bar. So really great gems and pledges from the attendees. So book in for a demo on our CultureSMART Accelerator, and we can walk you through it and see, is it something for you? Thank you.